Hi, it's Summer, and this is my July and August wrap up. I have a lot of books to talk about, so I'm just gonna get right into it. The first book that I read in July was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. The synopsis says, 2 best friends, 10 summer trips, one last chance to fall in love. It's about Poppy and Alex. She has insatiable wanderlust, he prefers to stay home with a book, and somehow ever since a fateful car share home from college many years ago, they are the very best of friends. If I'm remembering right, Poppy works for a travel magazine, so she gets paid to go on these trips, and so Alex always goes with her. They had kind of a falling out on the last trip that they took, and so she's trying to convince him to take one more vacation together, lay everything out on the table, and make it all right. This one is super similar to a Christmas book that I read a couple of years ago. I think it's called Holiday Romance. It's also about friends to lovers and travel and stuff like that. So I guess that's another book recommendation. If you liked this one, you can read that one during the holidays coming up. But I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. Emily Henry is really making a comeback for me because my first book that I read from her was Beach Read, and I really didn't like it very much. But I read her most recent release and loved it, gave that one 5 stars. I read this one and loved it, gave it 5 stars. So I'm really excited to keep reading more of her books. For this one, I said, I loved this. I maybe could bump it to a 4.5, but it was such a good book, so I'm bumping it up to a 5. I loved all of the travel and that it was friends to lovers, and especially that it was adult friends to lovers. I'm not really a fan of childhood friends to lovers, but for some reason when they're adults and become friends, and then it turns into a romance, that's like my favorite thing ever. Love Light Farms also has that trope in it, and that's one of the main reasons that I love it so much. The format of current day and then flashing back to previous vacations was so fun, and it really helped you get to know the characters and see their relationship develop. All of the banter and inside jokes were also a favorite part. So yeah, I really loved this. It's probably gonna be on my favorite books of the year list. After that, I read Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I was really excited about this one, but it turned out to just be okay. I gave it 3 stars. This one is about the main character. He's an adult, I think like in his 30s or 40s, and he has just recently moved back into his childhood home. In the backyard of this childhood home, when he was a kid, him and his friend Billy were having a camp out in the backyard during the summer, and Ethan, the main character, woke up the next day with a slash in the tent and Billy was missing. So all of these years have passed and they've never been able to find Billy or find out what happened to him, and so that's kind of been haunting him his whole life. But now some weird things are happening at his childhood home that make him think that he might actually be being haunted, and also some things from the mystery are kind of coming to light. I said I was so excited about this one, but it was just boring and repetitive. I also guessed who was behind everything and how it happened super early in the book. It was just very predictable. I did like the atmosphere and the audiobook narrator though, and it did keep me entertained enough while I was doing things around the house. Overall, it was very average and not my favorite from him. There just really wasn't anything like shocking or surprising that happened in this one for me. Like I said in the review, I caught on to who was behind everything super early on. So it just wasn't as fun for me because I didn't feel like I was unraveling the mystery along with the characters. I was just kind of waiting for them to catch up. Riley Sager is still a favorite author of mine, but this one just isn't one of my top favorites from him. I read Middle of the Night and this next book for Summerween, which I have a vlog for, so I'll put that up in the cards. This next one is Something is Killing the Children. It's a horror graphic novel comic that I really enjoyed. I gave this one 4 stars. This one is about the kids in a small town that are going missing. It says, most of the children never return, but the ones that do have terrible stories, impossible details of terrifying creatures that live in the shadows. And so Erica Slaughter, a monster killer, is going to come into this town and kill the monsters and save everybody. I gave this one 4 stars. I said this was so good, so creepy, and a really interesting take on monsters. Erica is also iconic and I love her. This just felt really well done and cinematic, and I can't wait to continue in the series. It definitely felt cinematic, like the way that everything is laid out felt almost kind of like you were watching a movie a little bit. It has the first chapter and some sketchy stuff happens in it, and then you turn the page and it has kind of like the opening title screen almost is what it feels like. And then it continues to the rest of the story. I really liked this though. It's perfect for spooky season and I will for sure be continuing in the series. After that is the start of my kind of mindless books. July was honestly a really hard month for me just because of some family stuff that was going on, so I just needed books that were mindless and fun and I didn't have to think about too hard. So one of those books was Pucking Around by Emily Rath. This is a Why Choose reverse harem hockey romance. It's about the main character who's a sports medicine doctor, and she gets hired on for this hockey team to be their in-house doctor, and then she ends up getting together with some of the guys from the hockey team. I gave this one 3 stars. I said this was definitely the spiciest book that I've ever read, and it was a fun time. It's mostly all sex with no plot, so I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. The second half definitely got repetitive and made me lose interest, but it was still a fun time, and I could just turn my brain off and just listen to the audiobook, which was exactly what I needed at the time. After that, I reread Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. When I'm stressed out or if I'm in a reading slump, I really love to reread books because you already are familiar with the characters and the story, so you can really just kind of like tune out a little bit if you want to. You don't have to be paying attention to every little detail. This was my third time reading this, I'm pretty sure, and I listened to the graphic audio for this one, and it was really good, really well done. I still really enjoyed it. I know that this series gets a lot of hate, but I just think it's really fun and sexy, and there's dragons, so I had a really good time revisiting this one. I also did the same thing with Iron Flame. I did the graphic audios. Same thing as Fourth Wing. I had a great time. It was really fun, and I could just kind of turn my brain off. I also still stand by my original ratings for those. I gave Fourth Wing 5 stars and Iron Flame 4 stars. After that, I read the first 4 books in the Clickanian series by Victoria Aveline. All of the books are like sci-fi alien romances. It's actually pretty similar to the Ice Planet Barbarian series, where it's about like these human women that get kidnapped from Earth. They kind of escape the bad aliens and get taken in by the good aliens. The aliens on this planet are having a population crisis where there are not enough women, and so throughout the series they find out that human women can form like mating bonds with the Clickanian aliens, and it just kind of follows like different characters throughout the series and like their love story and stuff. These definitely aren't like literary masterpieces or anything. They really are just kind of like guilty pleasure, like fun, turn off your brain books. So if you like alien romances, I think that you should try this series because it's just fun. After that, I read Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. This is the third book in the Love Light Farm series, and I think so far this is my least favorite in the series. I gave this one 3 stars. It was just kind of okay. This one is about Layla, who is a part owner of Love Light Farms, and she owns a bakery. She has kind of given up on love because all of the people that she's dated in her past and that she's been currently trying to date have just kind of been losers. One of her regular customers at the bakery is Caleb, and they kind of have this friendship. He's a local teacher, and he totally has a crush on her. He kind of saves her from a really bad date that he kind of happens to walk in on at a local bar. He's also having a hard time with romance, so he comes up with an idea where they will fake date each other for a month. He's going to do his best to renew her faith in relationships, and she's also going to help him with his relationship problems. But of course they end up forming feelings for each other. There's also a subplot of Layla getting a chance to be highlighted in this magazine for her bakery and stuff, so that's kind of fun to read about. I love anything that has to do with like bakeries or like food in books, so I especially liked those portions of this one. So even though this was, I think, my least favorite in the series, it was still really cute, and I loved being at Love Light Farms again. I love Layla and her cute bake shop, but Caleb got on my nerves a little bit with how much pressure he was putting on their dates and how upset he would get if things didn't go perfectly to his plans. And I also really did not like the audiobook narrators for this one. After that, I read a poetry collection called From Sand to Stars by Shelby Lee. I also gave this one 3 stars. For this one, I said I liked this collection. I couldn't tell if it was just the format of the arc or if this collection will be physically published this way, but all of the poems were crammed together and it read more like a run-on sentence rather than individual poems. I'm more of a fan of the individual poems on a page, so the layout definitely negatively affected my reading experience. It also felt pretty repetitive, being told the same messages over and over again, but in a slightly different way. I really enjoyed the author's note though, and the imagery of this collection. I think this would be a great collection for someone new to the genre. After that, I read A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I gave this one 3 stars as well. I feel like I can't even remember what this one is about. It's a dark retelling of The Goose Girl. It has some kind of like witchy vibes in it. It's about this young girl named Cordelia and basically just like all of the trauma and abuse that she goes through because of her mom. Her mom has these powers that she really just uses for evil. She doesn't allow Cordelia to have any friends. She takes away a lot of Cordelia's agency, like she literally doesn't have control over her actions. Her mother ends up marrying this guy, I'm pretty sure for like his money and his status, but this guy has a sister who is kind of catching on to Cordelia's mom, and it's kind of just about them trying to find a solution for getting rid of this evil woman. For this one I said I always enjoyed T. Kingfisher's writing style and descriptions, but this one was a little bit slow for me. It's very character driven with not much plot. Each character was clear and vivid though, and you really felt like you knew them. This one made me so angry for Cordelia and what her mother was doing to everyone around her, which made the ending of the book even more satisfying. This one was good, but just not my favorite from the author. After that, I finally got a 5-star book, thank God. I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I read this one because I actually got to go to an author signing for the 3rd book in this series, so I got this one signed too. I have a whole entire vlog for the author event, so I will link that in the cards if you want to go watch it. I love this book so much. It's a romantasy. This one is about Signa Farrow. She is 19 and she can't die. Or I guess a better way to put it is that every time she dies, she comes back from the dead. And every time that she dies, she can see death and like interact with him and talk with him. They're kind of enemies because in her life, pretty much everyone around her has died, and so she blames death for that. She's orphaned and she isn't old enough yet to inherit her parents' estate, so she's just been kind of passed along to these different family members, but one by one they each die. So after her most recent caretaker passes away, she ends up going to stay at this manor called Thorngrove. She's staying there with her remaining relatives that are the elusive Hawthorns. I'm pretty sure that it's her uncle that owns the estate. His wife recently just passed away, so they've been kind of grieving, and he's doing that in his own way that not everybody in the house agrees with. He has a son and a daughter. The daughter is currently dying from the same illness that her mom had. Along with Signa being able to escape death, she can also see spirits. So Signa sees a ghost of their deceased mother, and she's claiming that she was poisoned. So she's going to try and get to the bottom of this murder. She gets the help from a stable boy named Silas to help her kind of try to figure out who the killer is. And then she also kind of has to have an alliance with death to get to the bottom of it. I feel like that was just like the longest explanation of this book ever, but if you want beautiful writing and just like dark, moody, gothic vibes, like this is the book that you need to read. It's so good. Another thing too is that this book really surprised me. I was reading this and I thought that I had everything figured out. I thought that I knew where it was going and what the plot twists were going to be, but I was totally taken by surprise. I was so wrong, and I was so glad that I was wrong because it was a really fun time getting surprised. I'm just gonna read the first couple of lines of chapter 1 because I feel like that really sets the tone for this book. It's said that 5 belladonna berries are all it takes to kill someone. Just 5 sweet berries eaten straight from the foliage, or as Signa Farrow preferred, mashed and steeped into a mug of tea. Please read this book, it's so good. So of course after I finished that one, I immediately had to pick up Foxglove. I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked this one too. I said I knew where this one was going from pretty early on, but I'm not mad about it because it was executed so well. I love these characters and I especially loved the setting. Just like the first book, the writing was perfect, so beautiful and descriptive. The only reason it's not a 5 stars is because I had a hard time getting into this one. I don't know if it was the pacing or just me. I don't think I'm going to say anything about this one because it is the second book in a series and I just don't want to give anything away. But I really love this series and you really should give it a try if you haven't already. After that I read another poetry collection called Gutter Rainbows by Melissa Eleftherian. I gave this one 4 stars. I could maybe bump it down to 3.5, but this was a really good collection. There was a lot in this one that I didn't understand, but I still enjoyed the imagery and the language. It felt nostalgic and there were themes of womanhood and misogyny, but it was all related back to the earth and rocks and minerals, which I thought was really cool and creative. There were too many big and uncommon words in my opinion, and it felt kind of pretentious. Overall, I did enjoy the collection though, and my favorite poems were Brighton Beach, Gutter Flower, A Snake Metrical, Cleavage, Hematite, Asphalt, and Alethea. I hope I said that right. Next, I read an arc of a graphic novel that's coming out on September 17th. It's called Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. I gave this one 4 stars. This one was really fun and just shocking and unhinged. It's basically a mix of Shady Hollow, which is a cozy mystery about anthropomorphic animals, and the horror graphic novel Beautiful Darkness, which sounds kind of insane, but I promise it's in the best way. In other reviews, I also saw this one compared to Zootopia mixed with Dexter, which is also iconic. It takes place in this small town where there's a serial killer, but she's an upstanding citizen and she doesn't ever kill anyone in the small town. She always travels to a different city to do all of her kills. One day there's a murder that happens in her town though that she's not responsible for, so she's trying to find this other murderer before it can cause problems for her. I definitely recommend it if you just want a fun, kind of unhinged time graphic novel for spooky season. Next, I read a new release. It's called A Banh for Two by Trinity Wynn. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a sweet sapphic romance about 2 foodies in love. Vivi meets Lan while studying abroad in Vietnam, and they spend the semester unraveling their family's histories and eating all the street food in Saigon. Vivi is Vietnamese American and she's living in America, but she decides to do a study abroad program in Vietnam to try and find out about her history. Her mom never talks to her about her family and is really secretive about it, and has always been really against Vivi ever going to Vietnam to find out about her family. So she lies to her mom, tells her that she's going somewhere else to study abroad, but is actually staying in Vietnam, where she meets Lan, who is her favorite food blogger. She writes a street food blog called A Banh for Two, and she also runs a food cart with her family. Lan has kind of had writer's block, and so Vivi is going to help her kind of break out of that writer's block, and Lan is going to help Vivi try to track down her family, because Vivi only has like photographs of them. She doesn't really have names or anything, so they have to kind of explore the city and talk to people to kind of track down her family. For this one, I said I initially picked this one up because I really enjoy stories that show me a perspective unlike my own, so I wasn't expecting to relate to this one on such a deep level. I really related to Vivi's family situation, and it made me feel so seen to read about it. It actually made me really emotional, which I think is the sign of a good book. I was literally sobbing my eyes out at like 2 in the morning, so it was a lot, but it was also really therapeutic. I loved all of the talk and descriptions of food, hearing about the history of Vietnam, and I loved the sweet romance. It was a little bit insta-lovey, but it was still really cute. The audiobook was also great, so I definitely recommend listening to this one. If you enjoyed a pho love story or a Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, I think you'll really like this one. After that, I read another new release. This one is The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I gave this one 3 stars. It's about these 2 kids that went missing in these woods for like 6 months back in the 80s, I think. When they were found, it didn't seem at all like they had been surviving in the wilderness. They returned better off than they initially left. Stronger, healthier, and they didn't really have any good answers about where they had been the whole time. Current day, one of the boys that went missing has grown up, and for his job, he finds missing people. It's like he has this gift for it to be able to track people down. And so that's what draws one of the main characters, Emily, to him, to track down her missing sister. Her sister went missing years ago in the same woods that him and his friend went missing in. So Emily, the guy who finds missing people named Jeremy, and his friend Rafe are all going to go back to the place that they went to when the boys went missing. This one is inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, and it definitely gives off that vibe. For this one, I said I really liked the premise of this one and the characters and the writing. It felt really similar to the Wayward Children series by Sean McGuire. I'm a big fan of Portal Fantasy, but this one just didn't work as well for me. The pacing throughout the whole book felt very one note and didn't really have any stakes. The ending also felt very rushed. I still enjoyed my reading experience, and it was a quick read, but it was just okay. And then the last book in this wrap-up is another poetry collection. It's called A Bit Much by Lindsay Rush. This one also comes out on September 17th. This one is advertised as a poetry collection for people that didn't even know that they liked poetry. So this collection is perfect for people that are wanting to dip their toe into the poetry genre. It has writing that's easy to understand and relate to. As someone who has read a bit of poetry now, I found it to be kind of middle of the road. I gave it 3 stars. I had a lot of poems that I really liked, but I also had a lot that I just kind of ended up skimming. It just felt like a really long collection that could have been edited down. It also didn't really feel like poetry so much as funny / cheesy anecdotes. It's still a fun read though, and I think that it will bring more people into the genre. I had a lot of favorite poems for this one just because it was a bigger collection. There were just more poems that I gravitated towards than the average like shorter collection. So if you want a list of my favorite poems, it's included in my Goodreads review. Those are all the books that I've read in the past couple of months though. It was honestly a really weird couple of reading months, but that's okay. I did find a few really good books in there. I found a new all-time favorite series that I'm really excited to continue in September. I think Belladonna was definitely my favorite thing that I read over the past couple of months, so I'm going to use it to inspire the secret emoji for this video. So if you made it to the end of the video, leave a teapot emoji in the comments, since Signa prefers to make her Belladonna berries into tea. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Appalachian sunrise.